Well, hello everyone, and welcome here to the Daily Quest number 26. My name is Solid Jake, and today we're taking a closer look at Lunara. Now, Lunara just came out yesterday, and we did a bit of a first impressions video yesterday, and I didn't really anticipate that I'd make a full-on run-through of a potential build that we might see in competitive, like an esports style, for maybe, 3 to 4 days, so I didn't plan on making this until next week, but after getting a good feel for playing her for a good full day, and then sitting down and talking with a few players, notably Arthelon, I have a pretty good feel for exactly what the strengths and weaknesses are of this hero and how this hero will likely end up being played in competitive. And notably, we're going to look at a build that Arthelon agrees with me that is probably the optimal build. Now, it's actually pretty darn close to what I've been running, but with a few tweaks, and I'll explain exactly why. And then another build that probably not as competitively viable, but is definitely very, very fun to do. But before we get into the actual builds, let's take a bit of a look at Lunara. Now, this hero, she does a lot of things well. She has phenomenal poke. Her damage output in general is good. Her lane clear is great. And she has vision, right? The Wisp grants her a good amount of vision. So she has utility, she has damage, and she has that constant mobility. So against, most melee heroes, she's going to do quite well. Maybe not so well against Illidan, but the rest of the melee roster, she should be able to get away from them in most situations. But for weaknesses, she really is incredibly squishy. She has about the same hit points as Nova or Vala, which might not sound that squishy, but Nova is a hero that is all about ambush and all about waiting for the moment and destroying your opponent. Vala has Vault and a good amount of mobility, and she does definitely stay, and she kites the best she can. But with Lunara, you don't have Vault readily available. You could go for the Leaping Strike at level 10, then you're spending a Heroic Charge to effectively Vault, and it's a little bit limited because you can't use it on allies. You're kind of, stuck to using it on an opponent. So she doesn't really have that capability to dive away. So it's she definitely does have to use that Wisp to cover all of her corners and just make sure that she is safe to be pushing wherever she is, because she's going to struggle. If she gets hit by a single gravity lapse from Kil'Thas, who is largely considered to be the best assassin in the game, she's probably going to die. Heroes that have strong burst damage in general are very, very good against Lunara. The bane of her existence is going to be, Arthelon said, he's like, I hate fighting Nova and Kil'Thas more than any other heroes in the game, and he does have Lunara to level 10 already. Like, he has been grinding this hero quite a bit. But overall, she does have a great poke, great damage, and great lane clear, and then she does have the vision. Now, let's just take a quick moment to talk about heroics. Due to the fact that this is a hero that really doesn't stay alive very well when she's in the thick of things, Leaping Strike is a lot less valuable than I thought it would be. When I first saw this ability, I was like, whoa, that mobility is just way too good. But when it comes down to it, in the middle of a team fight, in heroes, generally you're having all-out 5-man team fights quite frequently, you're not going to want to use this to start the fight. This is the kind of thing you're going to use if you find somebody out of position, and you're going to Leaping Strike on them and try to blow them up. Or it's really good for chasing, and in some situations, it's good for escaping. You can make some really fun, really ridiculous plays escaping from your opponents with Leaping Strike, but generally speaking, I think Thornwood Vine is going to be the way to go. She's a hero that is going to excel at doing a lot of sustained damage from afar. She does do a ton of sustained damage, spreading out the targets, getting that poison onto multiple targets, and then Thornwood Vine just helps do that. You do a lot of damage in a line. It applies your poison, your dot, and then you can obviously use her W to explode that with Crippling Spore. So this is going to make her like amazing at lane clear. You spend one charge down at a line of minions and you just hit W and you walk away, and that line of minions is just done. You don't even have to think about it again. And that's just like one of great utility that she has for quickly rotating through the lanes. She just cleans up the wave and she goes back in. But let's take a closer look at like an actual build. So keep your eyes focused on the range poke. Now, this is the build that Arthelon is generally running right now. You're pretty much always going to get Cruel Spores. Now, Cruel Spores, that means when your Crippling Spores hits only minions and mercs, that's the W that you choose to detonate, it will reduce the cooldown by 80% and refund half your mana. So it costs 40, it refunds 20 mana for doing that. This is such a strong talent when it comes to lane clear and murking, and so many other talents are triggered off your crippling spores that you pretty much have to get this. Like, this is how you play Lunara. She's all about getting empowered by activating crippling spores and then doing improved auto attack damage with those buffs that are then activated. At level 4, you're going to go for time loss wisp generally. Now, this is just going to make it so that you have a wisp more frequently, right? If the wisp isn't active, the cooldown recharges 100% faster. So you're going to have that available.
Thanks for all the information.
Thanks for the donation, Enlod. Anyways, continuing on, very much appreciated. Continuing on with this video, we do see that there was a lot of options. This entire tier is dedicated to wisps, and you could think of dividing wisp as like a really good one if you just want to cover both flanks and get really aggressive with the push paired with a Sylvanas or something like that. You could go for Skybound Wisp and like try to have that big clairvoyance, which is pretty cool, I guess, and probably very good against something like Nova.
Well met.
Damn, I need to turn those notifications off. Thera Angel, thank you for the host, but let me turn those off for this YouTube video. Much appreciated, guys. But yeah, when it comes to the Wisp talents, generally speaking, you're going to go for the time loss wisp most of the time. But if you're playing against a stealthy, since Nova is actually so very good, you might want to spec into something like Skybound, because this will reveal an entire area after it dies. And it's pretty useful for those situations where Nova is being a big threat to you in general. When we get to level 7, that's going to be Wild Vigor. And Wild Vigor, we talked about this. With the level 1 talent that we're already grabbing, you're grabbing Cruel Spores. At level 7, you grab Wild Vigor. That's basically crits for your next 4 attacks. And that's a lot of damage that you can apply to a single target or spread out. So even if you're just grabbing a mercenary camp, this pays for itself, because pretty much 2 seconds later, you have 4 more attacks that are going to have this amplified damage. And it just, the damage output that it gives Lunara is so much more significant. It's almost a must grab at this point, from what I can tell. Like we talked about, Leaping Strike is very risky. Lunara does not have a big health pool. So you dive in there with Leaping Strikes, and then so many times myself and other Lunaras I've seen will use Leaping Strike and then just die. They'll try to use it in a team fight, they'll try to use it in a cheeky way, and their target will move at the last moment, and then they get put into an odd position, and it's lights out. So at the end of the day, Thornwood Vine is just, it's more valuable. You have 3 charges, it's massive AoE, it's phenomenal poke, it applies your poison. You want that poison on target so that you can, proc your crippling spores. And then it has just so much great synergy for that. It gives Lunara a lot of AoE, and she thrives on having that poison on as many targets as possible. So really, when it boils down to it, it's just far more useful at pushing out lanes and far more useful in an overall team fight. So Crippling Spores going to be the option there for level 10. Looking at level 13, this is something that I talked to Arthelon about in particular. I said, do you think it's ever worth grabbing Giant Killer even if you're against 2 to 3 warriors or 2 warriors in Asmodin? A lot of heroes with big health pools where Giant Killer gets that improved, value at that point. But really, he came down to it and he's like, you know what? How often are you going to be using auto attacks consistently? It's not like you're sitting there spamming auto attacks constantly like an Illidan would be. And Giant Killer probably won't get that full utility that you might think. So he suggests, and I agree after some testing, that Unfair Advantage is by far the best way to go here. This, again, it's all about activating your crippling spores and then getting the improved damage on that target. So Nature's Toxin deals 50% more damage to heroes that are slowed. So now these targets are taking a lot of damage from that poison, which is being spread out on everything through Thornwood Vine, and you're doing 50% more damage with every auto. And then at level 16, since you're already, a hero that is all focused around a lot of poke and a lot of sustained damage, you go for Starwood Spear, and this is 50% more range for 6 full seconds. So if you manage to maintain this, you can really have a ridiculous amount of damage from a very long range using Starwood Spear at 16, and Lunara becomes quite a formidable damage dealer at the long range. Again, this hero suffers from having low survivability, especially in battle. She's not going to have a lot of escape. So level 20, that's when you're going to get Galloping Gait. And this will give Lunara some more mobility in team fights. It's kind of like the closest thing she has to Bolt. Not quite as good as Bolt of the Storm because obviously it's not immediate, but it is a huge movement speed boost and it can be used aggressively. Lasting for a full 6 seconds, it gives her like a lot of utility in fight. So using this in the thick of things, you can kite just about any hero in the game and have, just a really mobile presence in those fights without having to spend your heroic on Leaping Strike to try to have any kind of impact in the fights or be able to be a little bit more mobile in the face of your opponents. But in the end, I think this is probably the way we're going to see Lunara's play out. When you think about it, she is kind of like Nova in the sense that she has to wait for her moment and blow things up, but instead she's waiting for her moment by poking. And Lunara really just wants to poke until you see that moment of opportunity when you can then get a little bit more aggressive. And then you find that single target and you might get a little bit more cheeky. But I'm telling you, if you get flanked on by a Jaina or Kael'thas or anything, she dies so insanely fast. And she doesn't have that vault. She doesn't have that barrel roll or form of mobility to really get out of there at moment's notice. And Leaping Strike isn't really a good replacement for that sort of thing. So Thornwood Vine does end up being the more valuable talent. The other build that we posted here is something that I advise you to try primarily for fun, right? This might not be the most competitively viable build, the ham Nara, I call it, because it's just going ham. And really the only difference with the build is you do get Leaping Strike to dive in and get the face of your opponent. Everything else is completely the same except for level 16, where you go for Invigorating Spores, which gives you, instead of 50% attack range, you get 50% attack speed. And you can really just go in there and blow up a target. If you want to play with a buddy and have him cast Divine Shield on you, so you can just go into someone and just like blow them up faster than they can even imagine. It is quite enjoyable and quite fun, but really if you're looking to win your Hero League games with Lunara, you probably want to go for the range poke style here that Arthelon and I discussed earlier today. I think he's actually going to do a full breakdown himself very soon, either through a thread or a video, talking about Lunara as a whole for the hero and like some of the things that he doesn't necessarily like from the design. I'm not going to spoil that. I'll leave that to himself because we've already talked about a fair amount of it. But speaking of Arthelon, there's a few rumors going around, formerly Tempo Storm, and now apparently formerly Bob Ross Fan Club, according to one of his teammates, Kenma. Supposedly he is joining Cloud9. So if that's true, well, that's some big news here for the competitive scene. But we're actually going to take a look at a replay from Arthelon, where he actually is. I haven't watched it yet. He's going to show us all of his fat Lunara skills here on Sky Temple, and we can just load on into this matchup. Now we'll turn all the tunes on, get the sound ready. And we can see he is actually facing a team that does not have Lunara. This is Hero League. He's playing with Johanna, Raynor, Tyrande. Let's pull this back up. Johanna, Raynor, Tyrande, Artanis, and then we have a Johanna. And on the opponent's team, we see they have Zagara, Kael'thas, Muradin, Tassadar, and Uther. Now, for heals, there's not a whole lot of heals here. Lunara doesn't have self-heal. It's really just Tyrande that has healed in general. So the Zagara would be a pretty big threat if a Hydralisk was ever thrown down on Lunara. She would just have to get up and run away. The 20% move speed, very good for those situations. And Kael'thas is really the biggest risk overall in this matchup. Kael'thas just able to blow up Lunara very quickly. A single Gravity Lapse would just about seal the deal. And bam, good. Looking at the talents, level 1, Lunara did go for the Cruel Spores. We talked about that as just about being almost entirely crucial. And Artanis actually going for the increased bonus damage versus non-heroic enemies. So Farm Tanis, I'm actually a little intrigued by that. Of course, Artanis did see some changes in this patch. He got a bit of a nice buff that was very much needed. All right. I'm just going to watch from Arthelon's perspective as he bounds into the middle of the map. She actually does stop bounding when she stops moving. I was a little surprised, but I actually expected her to continue bouncing around like a happy little reindeer continuously throughout the game, even if she wasn't moving, just because of how excitable she seems. But no, not today. And yes, that is in fact the Master Skin. Arthelon has been playing that much Lunara. He has unlocked his Master Skin already, only 1 day since the game, or since she has been released into the game. And he's using that superior mobility to really just kind of scout out. He's well aware that he is quite vulnerable, but he has eyes on the top lane. Muradin's up there. He knows Kael'thas was in the top area. Pretty unlikely for Kael'thas to rotate down, so he doesn't have to worry about any of the stuns. Really, Hammer of Justice isn't going to connect with him very easily. He can just run away from Uther, and Uther doesn't have anywhere near enough damage to kill Lunara in these situations. So he's just actively rotating around looking for an opportunity, and he does have this wisp giving him vision. So this is a crucial part of playing Lunara, being very active with your wisp, covering rotations and those kind of scenarios. And once they know they have a nice opportunity, he goes down to put a lot of damage onto Zagara. If Tyrande had landed that Lunar Flare, that would have been a kill. So constantly controlling the vision, controlling these kind of situations where you think you could get the superior rotations on your opponent, well, that's one of the big strengths that Lunara has as a whole. We do see the temples have spawned here, middle and top of the map. It is being contested here in the mid. Top one has been ignored so far, but the action is here in the middle of the game. Tassadar and Uther that's a lot of sustain here for the blue team. So red team, they have to really just, flex their incredible poke damage, but Arthelon a little bit too far forward, taking a lot of damage. With the last heal coming through there from Tyrande, will be able to survive, but Arth did take a lot there, so he's got to be playing a little bit further back this time around, actually looking to just push back this mid wave. And you can see he's just spreading out his damage. He tries to put that poison on as many targets as possible, and they whittle down very quickly. The lane clear of Lunara is rarely matched by enemy opponents just because of how good and how effective it is, especially in the late game. We see Zagara is alone here in the bottom. Lunara rotating down with our Artanis. The Hydralisk shredding through Artanis' life pool, but that passive coming through. Zagara does fall, but Artanis is traded out as well. The moment that we see Kael'thas, he's going to look for all that damage possible, throws out the double living bomb, and the Gravity Lapse does not connect. But, I mean, that's not really a fight that he can contest. With Flame Strike being used, he might try to get a little cheeky, just trying to keep these minions whittled down the best he can. A single living bomb would kill Arthelon at this point, so he needs to be very careful in the backside, just trying to blow him up. Gravity Lapse going through the wall, but not connecting. Looking at the temples, they were relatively even at the end of the day. We saw the mid temple controlled here by the blue team, top temple controlled by our red team. So the experience is just about dead even. Kills currently 1-1 in this game. So nothing really incredible to note in those kind of regards. We do see Kael'thas opts to back up. Did he not have Gravity Lapse? He must have cast it and I missed it because Tyrande did slip away. Good for her. I'm rotating stay mid, says Johanna. So Johanna wants to be that rotation tank, even though she doesn't really excel in that field compared to other warriors like Murden or etc. Condemn is nice for rotations, but definitely not the strongest. We see that Zagara was picked off here. Red team had 4 members in the bottom. They managed to pick off Zagara, granting themselves a nice advantage, as the blue team is currently soaking just the top lane. They're working on this bruiser camp to try to time this out for the next temple spawn. It is picked up a little bit early, and they're also giving up a lot of experience and damage since they lost Zagara in the bottom. These giants plus Artanis shredding through this tower like it's nothing. They have the experience lead already from the kill and lack of soak here on the blue team, and they're sitting themselves in a nice spot. But Arthelon, what is his goal? His goal is to just continue galloping around the map and looking for these kills. Finding Kael'thas, quickly able to blow him up with the help of Raynor. Health pool just gone in a moment, but you can see a few abilities out of Kael'thas have taken Arthelon down significantly. He lost a lot of hit points from that. They know it is now time to properly collect the bruisers up here in the top for the next temple spawn. They already have a nice push in the bottom, but this is now the blue team's turn to try to get some soak in the bottom lane that the red team's missing, and Zagara is pushing back into this lane, will be able to take out a tower of their own. End of the day, red team just sitting up a little bit in XP due to their superior soak so far, and they do have a superior kill count as well. They're up 2 kills, but they will lose this tower, and that will just about even things up, 8-8 right now, with these giants walking down here. Now, let's just pause for a moment. This isn't really necessarily related to Lunara. It's related to mercenary timings in general. You saw the blue team grab this bruiser camp about a minute ago, and it really didn't do anything. What did those mercenaries do? Oh wait, they didn't even make it to the wall. They did nothing. The blue team lost experience collecting them, and the mercenaries didn't do anything at the end of the day. Where the red team was soaking, and they picked up a kill on Zagara, so they lost the experience down here, and they didn't commit multiple people to the mercenary camps until there was an actual value to it. They pick up this mercenary camp 2 minutes after the first temples expired, which makes these bruisers march down here at a timing where the temple just became available right here. They're pinging to go collect it, and Kael'thas actually has to defend. They would lose this fort if Kael'thas didn't stay, but this also makes this a 4v5 situation in favor of the red team. So I really can't stress enough how important it is to time your mercenary camps effectively in pair with the tribute. Remember, when the last temples expired. Remember those sorts of things, and it will benefit you greatly. It's just a 2-minute timer after the last temple. It's quite easy to set that mental reminder. Even type it in the chat so your team knows, like type 152, and then you remember at 352 it's time to go to the next camp. Obviously those timers wouldn't be accurate, but anyways, so Kael'thas in the top lane. Uther went to soak the mid lane, which is the right call, but the rest of the team is just doing a good job keeping the red team back. Lunara back in base, so it is a 4v4 due to this, and experience is rather even. Lunara looking to just push out this one lane. Kael'thas has rotated down after it cleaned up these knights, and things are rather even at the end of the day. Temple being controlled by red team, getting those shots off, and just making their way through that next tower. If they get that tower, it's going to give them a nice advantage going towards level 10, but losing 1 or 2 heroes here could spell disaster for either side. We see Johanna just staying on that point as consistently as possible, and beautiful condemn hitting 3 targets, and Arthelon looking to push on in. Arthelons in the backside, he finds Kael'thas just using that dash attack going forward, but no, it's actually Raynor that goes down a little bit too far forward. The team was rather split up there, with Arthelons too afraid to commit to a fight early, looking for the flank, and 3 members committed without Lunara and Arthelons. So at the end of the day, red team just kind of have poor posture for that team fight. They end up losing the fight handily, and blue team does get the heroics. The red team just accordingly, they back on up and start soaking. Let's take a look at the talents here for Lunara so far. Lunara did go for Cruel Spores, and then Time Lost Wisp. And then last but not least, oh my goodness, Lunara, Divine Storm was just used. Gravity Lapse does connect, and that will be lights out. Oh my goodness, Shadow Stalk not quite enough to save Lunara, so yes, that is going to be a death. I can't believe we're seeing Divine Storm. That's new. Arthelon's even a little bit surprised about the fact that Divine Storm has been picked up. Not a very common talent, especially when you're not fighting a melee assassin. I guess it could be good against Arthelons. Still a little bit weird. But anyways, Cruel Spores, very good for just, you know, the additional activations for your Crippling Spores. We have Time Lost Wisp. That's going to just allow you to have Wisp active pretty much as often as possible. And then we have Wild Vigor. That's just going to give Lunara the additional damage. So in a lot of these situations like this, you could really get a lot of extra damage done. Now that's going to be a nice kill there on Uther. Doesn't have Divine Shield or Divine Storm available in that situation, and they pick up the kill as he face checks the mercenary camp in the enemy side. Arthelon being rotated upon does need to be very wary. He realizes that a single Gravity Lapse would be lights out for him, so he just immediately backs on off, and his team is working on this boss under the nose of their opponents. It looks like NS Black and Necromongers will scout this out. We see the Hyperion has been cast. A beautiful I don't even know what I was going to say, goes off. And wow, Raynor does have to back away. Arthelons a little bit too far forward in the front line, doing his best to stay alive, but the boss stomps and eliminates him. And the throw pit, is it real? The boss just about dead. Lunar Flare will pick off the Zagara, and we see Tease on Tyrande stepping on that point. But Tyrande, you're not a tank. You can't live through that. Actually, both of your tanks are already dead, and the throw pit is real. Blue team steals the boss. They get the superior team fight in general, and now our red team has to respond to this boss. All of that was really just way too risky. Like, honestly, trying to go for a boss, I don't even know why Raynor stayed out there. Raynor died as well. Trying to go for a boss like that this early in the game when you don't really have a clear advantage. I think one hero might have been down. Way too risky. So they pay for it dearly. They are now down more than a level. The boss is down here keeping their attention, and the blue team can try to get some better presence across the map. Obviously, they have good creep spread, giving them eyes on in a lot of locations across the map. Uther looking to push out this bottom lane by himself, just feeling very confident after watching the entire enemy team pick up a boss to be here by himself. And Tassadar is murking, so blue team is really just doing their best to split up, soak as effectively as possible, knowing they have an advantage, and just abuse that through mercenary camps and, you know, additional lane soak. But with this approach here, just 2 members in the bottom lane, we saw the Tyrande's Lunar Flare was interrupted. This is very cheeky. This is a 2v. They don't even know what ends up being 2v4 at this point, and we do see that Uther is able to Divine Storm and then Force Wall and get away, somehow getting away with it. Zagara, Johanna soaking up their temples respectively across the map, and we do see Arthelon just galloping back onto safety. Now that we've hit level 13, we're going to see Arthelon go for his next talent pickup. I believe it is the increased damage from the poison is what he will go for here. And he's just thinking about it here at level 13 as he does run away. Luna Flare connecting at 2 targets, very nice, but they don't have either Arthelons or Johanna. They're 2 big frontliners, and they desperately need them. They have a pretty squishy back line. Raynor does have a fair amount of sustainability, but he did go for Seasoned Marksman, so he doesn't have Give Me More. Can't really live as effectively as he might want to. Arthelons looking to just get those mercenary camps by himself, while Raynor is kind of just going to hearth back home, though, realizing he's in a bit of a weird spot. Bottom wall will fall. That's 1,300 experience from the 2 towers combined. And we saw Arthelons cast his Heroic just to try to initiate a team fight. Does it work out? Yes, it does. Beautiful contempt on the entire team, but the Maw to disengage is successful. Kael'thas looking for the blow up. It's Tease in the front line. Dwarf toss in, but no. Johanna gets the kill there in the back on Kael'thas, and now Arthelons rotating down with the Shadow Stalk. Actually will find Zagara and blow him up, and now they can chase. Lunara is a hero that really excels at chasing opponents that are fleeing that 20% additional movement speed, and there we see the Heroic coming out. That Thorn, the Thornwood Vine, just shredding through, applying the poison, dismounting, and with unfair advantage, they take a lot of damage from the poison. You activate your Crippling Spores with Wild Vigor to get yourself that additional 50% attack damage, and Lunara starts to shred. Now that we're starting to get towards a little bit in the later game, we'll start to see Lunara's numbers start climb. She is keeping up with Raynor, but she's really a hero that starts to climb rather well in the late game. One thing Lunara has to be very conscious and wary about is the double shrink ray. This is entirely picked up to deny the fact that Lunara is so squishy. If you can hit her with a Shrink Ray, she's probably going to die. Shrink Ray, Divine Storm, Hammer of Justice, Storm, Bolt, Gravity Lamps. There's so many things that are designed to just stop the retreat of that hero that is so very squishy. And honestly, I think this is really smart on the blue team's side. But right now, we do see that there is a temple about to spawn here in the middle of the map. We see the mercenary camp being picked up down here. So a bit of a split put situation for the red team in their favor. And they're going to look to control this the best they can. Right now, they have that level 16 talent tier advantage. Lunara went for Starward Spear, and this is a great point for Lunara. She wants it. Now she has the additional range in a lot of these fights. She can poke much more safely in the backside, and she's going to look to do just that. All right, Lunar Flare connecting. You see how far Lunara is able to throw that. Barely not getting the kill on Uther, who is still poisoned, and now Lunara is on the chase, but Tassadar trying to peel, no, not able to. All the poison still there on Uther, and Lunara looking for the kill, and we see Arthelon getting up there. He throws out his thorns, Divine Storm connecting. He can't prance away fast enough, it seems, but no, he's able to kite successfully. The final spine's coming out, and the final hit, that incredible range, does end up killing Uther in a very close trade. Johanna continuing to chase Kael'thas down here. He applies his shield, but it shouldn't be enough. Oh, yes, it is, actually. Johanna, the one that's getting very low. Living Bomb not quite enough for the kill, and Murden does get picked off. A nice prism there from Arthelons, which was recently buffed in this last patch, so they pick up the kills. Lunara did go back to base because of how low she was from that brawl that she had with Uther, and they are successful in this fight. They take 4 for nothing. They are going to pick up this mid-temple and secure themselves a nice lead going into the late game. Okay, Arthelons murking it up hard. This seems to be this Arthelons' player's playstyle. He does go for triple strike and zealot charge, but you pair this with amateur opponent, and this is going to make Arthelons very good in the mercenary camps. But he's been doing this all game long. Templar, Zeal, and Psionic Synergy designed for sustainability, and a lot of these fights, definitely a style I haven't seen a lot of for Arthelons, but he's also a hero that we don't see in competitive play really ever. Maybe that will change with the increased auto attack range and the increased range and speed on his phase prism. All right, Arthelon scouting out. He does have that wisp in the center of that mercenary camp, and the moment the team dives on it, he just pokes his little cute head in there. But no, he's going to just back away. Sentinel once again revealing another member. Cappuccino hit with that owl, and now Arthelon knows that Cappuccino is all alone, just starts to apply a lot of poke from afar. Living Bomb will explode and eliminate that mercenary camp, and Arthelon wants to try to steal it, but this is very risky. Arthelons gets on the point, dives in there. Nice Arthelons ult with a beautiful Hyperion going above. They already get the 1 kill there on Uther. The Ghost of Uther keeping the team alive, but Arthelon poking so heavily from afar. The Living Bombs are a bit of a problem. They realized that the entire team had to kind of spread and split up after that point from that beautiful poke that is provided by Kael'thas, but Arthur is able to go toe-to-toe with that, but that Stormbolt connects. That will be lights out for Lunara. We see NS Black is going to be able to get that shield from Tassadar and survive for this moment, but Arthelons has already left. He is the Merc Master. He's going to start working on this camp, and even using the jukes there, diving into the lair of this spider boss himself. and staying alive for the time being. I don't know why this is called a Grave Golem, because it's not a Grave Golem, it's a Spider Bro. Oh, there he goes again. So fancy, and all this additional damage he has versus Mercenary Camps makes it very easy, especially paired with the Hunter's Mark of Tyrande. That boss fell rather quickly considering just 3 members were fighting it. Again, Arthelons working on the Merc Camps, and they're just trying to keep the blue team in their base as long as they can, with all of these Mercenary Camps being picked up across the map, giving our Lunara player, Mr. Arthelon, time to respawn, and these next 2 temples conveniently placed in the middle and top of the map. They have this huge distraction of the golem. They have the siege giants marching down bottom, and Lunara will be up in just about 1 second. Bam, there she is. Now they can control the top 2 lanes. This is a phenomenal position for them to be in. If they control the middle tower, the middle temple, this will definitely remove the mid keep. Like, this is already exposed and low. Even the top temple will do a lot of damage, just about removing this top keep as well. So right now, blue team in a great spot. The boss has been cleaned up after doing just a little bit of damage. This final wall surviving with the Shield of Tassadar on it, and it looks like we have a brawl about to break out. No level 20 Storm talents reached quite yet. We still see both teams sitting at the level 16 tier as their final talents. Kael'thas just flexing his explosive AoE damage on that lane of minions. Dwarf toss to safety. They're looking for the approach. We see the face was used early in the battle. Hyperion cast as well, and they're trying to seclude them. A lot of healing from the Shadowstalk there, and Lunara has been poking here in the bottom, but the Dwarf toss from Myrddin is very aggressive. Lunar Flare applying the peel that they need. Arth looking to get in there, but the Force Wall keeping him out of there. Arthelons is way too deep himself. Is he a noble sacrifice for the rest of the team? He does end up falling, the first member to fall in this fight, but Lunara is just chasing. Cappuccino is on the menu right now, and Arth is looking for the kill, but Force Wall will force him to retreat. The poison, not enough due to the shields. Prescience has been used, Dimensional Warp, to get to safety, but Raynor is sitting on the point, and that mid keep did end up falling. Top keep has knights on it. It's also being sieged from this mid temple, and the top temple hasn't even been touched at this point. Lunara continuing just to be obnoxious, looking for a poke, maybe a little bit too aggressive. The jukes, though, that level 20 talent, the Galloping Gate, this allows you to be way more aggressive with Lunara and make those kind of plays. You saw how quickly he was able to get out of that fight, and just throwing out the Thornwood Vines, trying to keep their opponents dismounted if at all possible. The mid temple has been collected, but they need to be careful here. They're being collapsed on 3 members versus 2. Raynor in the backside of things tries to juke down here. Force Wall will collect him and make him end up losing his life. And this is now a 3v5 situation for the blue team, so the red team does have to concede the rest of this top temple. They were able to get more than half of its ammunition. All 3 keeps have fallen in turn. So a beautiful just series of decisions made by our red team. Arthelon on Lunara just galloping around trying to bait this team Ore, but now he has the Galloping Gate once again. He's going to wiggle his way to safety on Lunara. Very mobile hero, able to blow up this wave rather quickly, just throwing down one use of the Thornwood Vine, pushing that away, and it's looking good. All right. Right now, he's just, again, baiting their existence, baiting the enemy team to chase him, but preventing them from really trying to push out at all or gather mercenary camps. Just this one safe camp of giants will be picked up. Lunara continuing to just keep eyes on with the Wisp in this bush, which was just cleaned up, and then the Sentinel being cast as well. This is a bit risky. The pings to retreat, give up the Merc camp. It is not worth losing one of your allies' life or one of your members' life to pick up a pack of giants. Really never worth that. We see Myrddin popping that avatar in the front line. Force Wall secluding 2 members from the fight. They're shooting over that wall. The incredible range of Lunara working out well. Phoenix has been cast, but they have to get out of the damage of that, but they're looking to get back into the battle. Divine Storm connecting on the entire team, and they lose Arthelons, but in the front line is Johanna, and she is standing strong. Indestructible popped here at the last moment. Lunara looking for that flank, needs to be careful of the gravity blast. It has been used, so that door is open to get a little bit more aggressive, but still being cautious in the backside. Ends up being a 1-for-1 trade. Arthelons from Myrddin, and Arthelon is trying to pull the entire team to him. He knows he has Galloping Gate. The enemy, his team is like, yo, be careful, dude, you're gonna die, and he does not care at all. He knows how mobile he is with that talent, waiting in the bush. There's his whiffs, gets eyes on Uther, and just immediately has to leave. We see the Hammer of Justice being cast, and then the Shrink Ray, but the Shadowstalk and the Galloping Gate, the Sentinel of his own, and he does manage to slip away in this moment. He's gonna find Cappuccino, maybe throw a few skill shots. No, doesn't think it's worth the risk, just waiting for his team to respawn. Again, he prevented them from pushing at all. He bought their time to just chase him, and he is gotta be just giggling to himself. They're like, what are you doing? And Arthelon is just like, man, I'm outclassing my opponents. That's what I'm doing. bottom temple is currently being sat on. The red team only has to control one temple to seal the deal in this game, and it looks like they should be able to do it, but the blue team realizes this, and they're making their way down. Bottom lane has been pushed out. Catapults will make their way to the core. This whole wave of minions, 3 catapults already on the core, and they're sitting there sieging up with the bottom temple. Tassadar pops Oracle to get vision on the enemy team's location. Arthelon trying to buy their attention, but they're not buying it this time. Force Wall has been used, forcing Johanna off the point. They're just backing away, but again, this core is very much exposed, down to 85% health, and Lunara is making her way to the top lane, just galloping up there herself. Sentinel revealing the rotation of the blue team. They can now collapse the bottom lane. We see that they get eyes on with the Sentinel. 3 members going down to fight Muradin, who is alone. They just need to control one temple, and that will seal the deal. Artana going to the core himself. Lunara controlling top. Blue team is 2 split. The beautiful decision-making of the red team works out in the end, and that is GG. Bam. The first ever Lunara cast featuring Arthelon with his new build. Rocks 64,000 damage at the end of the day. He did go this build that we talked about this at the start of the video, where it's very much about that long range poke. But one thing that we really saw out of Arthelon in this video was the mobility and the opportunity to really abuse the position, or abuse your opponents and force them to chase you, force them to think that they can get an advantage by killing you, and constantly just kind of bait them around the map. And he did that a lot. He constantly prevented them from getting an advantage after a team fight that was good on their end, and they would just run around trying to find him, try to kill him, and they wasted so much time doing this, buying the rest of his team time to push out lanes, get the experience they need, get into position for the successful temples. We saw the retreat in that last fight where Arthelon ended up just going to the top temple. The team split up. The Sentinel and Wisp both revealed locations on the enemy team as they were rotating, so they just went down to the bottom temple. They controlled that, and they won the game. Like, there's just a lot of cool things that Lunara brings to the table, but it's not that in-your-face brawling. That is really not what the hero is all about. The hero is more about poking, doing a lot of damage, having great lane clear. She does have good damage presence in the fights, but it's not like you dive in there with Jaina and you unload your combo and the enemy team dies. That's not how you play Lunara. It's very much more poking, passive, and about positioning. Positioning is so incredibly crucial because Lunara will die like that. She has less health than Jaina. She has less health than Kael'thas. She has about the same health as Nova and Vala, but she doesn't have the same kind of sneakiness and like escape mechanisms as like Vault or Barrel Roll that Falstad and Vala would have. So yeah, it's a pretty cool style to play for Lunara. I highly encourage you guys, check it out. And if you do in fact bust out some Lunara on the ladder, if you're playing Hero League or even Quick Match on the ladder, I would like to see your games. On Friday this week, I'll be doing another episode of the Daily Quest. One of my themes I call is Educast, where I commentate your games from any user at home that's watching, and I give tips and feedback as to like what could have gone better in the game in general. I don't just talk about your hero. I'll commentate the game in whole, and I'll give commentary, focusing a little bit more on Lunara this week in general than I normally would for the entire replays, but that will be the theme for Friday this week. Tomorrow's theme is still undecided. I'm thinking of doing a preview on Gen Greymane, as he has been completely data mined and is, as far as we know, the next hero coming out for Heroes of the Storm. That being said, feel free to hit the follow button on Twitch and subscribe here on YouTube. That's going to do it for the Daily Quest episode number 26. I'll be streaming some heroes in just a moment. Stay tuned.